Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding the combat system for a viewer's game. In particular, we've been talking about the viewer's desire to make the enemies and the player character and their companions block each other. In other words, if an enemy is at distance 3, as they are here, then no companion or the player character could move into that same range band. They could move to distance 2, but there they'd be blocked. And the same is true for the enemies. They'd be able to move into distance 2, but then they wouldn't be able to move into distance 1 if the companions were still there. So I've started a combat here, and you can see that companion 2 has chosen pistol whip. They're using the default behavior. There's no one to pistol whip, so they decide to move. They both have quite high hit points. They roll a 4, and so they advance, so they would be there. And then for their second action, they choose pistol whip again, and they want to move, and again they want to advance, but now they're blocked because there's an enemy in distance 3, and because we've updated the code. Previously they would have just moved into that space, but now they stay where they are and sort of waste their action, basically. And so we can see there that companion 2 is blocked. So let's have a look at the code that allows that to happen. This all takes place in companion moves. There actually used to be companion moves and then companion moves 2. But because of this rule, because of the rule that sort of our side and the enemy side can't move past each other, movement is now actually quite a bit simpler. And so it turned out to only need one passage for what was previously covered by 2. This won't involve any new variables. We're only using existing variables. And as I said before, this is only for, well, actually, I don't think I specifically spelt this out, but what I've done here only applies to default behavior. It doesn't necessarily work for all of the orders, and that's what I'm going to sort of look at next. So with that caveat, let's have a look in the page, and I'll zoom in. So as you may know, if you've been following this series, we simulate rolling 2 6-sided dice. We compare it to the companion's hit points, which is stored in slot 2. INI_who, which stands for who has initiative, is the currently acting character, and if we end up in this passage, it is specifically a companion. If the roll is higher than their hit points, they will retreat, and so we just reduce their location by 1. Their location is stored in $com INI_who 3. Otherwise, and making it work that way, if the roll is greater than their hit points, they retreat. That has the effect of the higher their hit points, the less likely they are to retreat, which is sort of what you'd expect. If they've either started out with very low hit points or they've been wounded, they will tend to go, all right, I don't really want to be on the front line anymore, and so they'll move back. And if they've got lots of hit points, they'll tend to want to go to the front line. If it's not higher than the hit points, if it's lower or equal, then things are slightly more complicated because they might advance or they might be blocked. And the way that we work that out is in this code here. We set Z equal to 0. We have a note that says it's set to 1 if any enemies block the companion's advance. And then we have a for loop. So this is a very common structure that we've been using. Have a temporary variable that's set to either 1 or 0. Usually I set it to 0, and then this code can trigger setting it to 1. But of course, there's no particular reason why it shouldn't be the other way around. It starts at 1 and is set to 0. But I just tend to use 0 to 1. We have a for loop which goes from 1 to enemy underscore max, which is the maximum number of enemies. We look at the location of an enemy, NME, which of course is short for enemy, enemy y3. If that is equal to com ini underscore who3, which is the location of the companion, plus 1, then we set z equals 1. In other words, we're looking for, is there anyone in the range band 1 higher than the one where the companion is? And if so, that enemy blocks the companion's advance. And that is true whether the enemy is hovering or on the ground. The viewer has said that they want hovering enemies to block the companion's advance as well. So we set z equal to 1. And then if it equals 1, once we've done the for loop, if it equals 1, we say, because we've got this message up here that says companion, let's say companion 2, for example, rolls, let's say 6. And then we would print this on the same line with a space, because it always puts a space between when it prints something and then prints something else with sort of code in between it. So it would say something like companion 2 rolls a 7 and so wants to advance but is blocked and does nothing this action. That's if z is equal to 1. In other words, if we found anyone blocking the companion advancing in this for loop. If that is not the case, then they will advance. And the message will be and the same, except it ends in and so advances. And we add 1 to the value of com ini underscore who3, which is what plus plus means. Minus minus means take 1 away from the current value of whatever variable we're talking about. Plus plus means add 1. Sorry, plus plus means add 1 to the value of that variable. Whatever happens, whatever message we print, because we're always going to print a message, we then print 2 line breaks and then we go on to the next action. And so that means that the companion's default behavior will never have them advancing into an occupied range band, or rather a range band occupied by enemies. They will advance into range bands occupied by either the player character or the companion. I don't know, I haven't sort of looked at the code yet for when we're talking about the orders that we've done so far. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'll look at these orders, and then I'll look at the enemies. I think perhaps their current coding might always prevent them moving forward, because if they have, I think that if they have an enemy 1 range band lower than them, then the attack they pick will always work, because the range of it is always going to be at least 1 range band, and therefore they won't ever move, because they only move when the attack that they pick doesn't have any targets. That's not true for companions, because they can have enemies in front of them who are hovering. But yeah, I will double check that, and then we'll move on to the other things that we've talked about that we need to do to finish this project. But for now, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.